Welcome back to Game Talk from the Bench. I'm your host, Drew Barreto. My normal co-host, he's out of town for the weekend, so I have my other uncle, my Uncle Joe. He is here for this week's episode. He's a big sports guy. He's a big Giants fan, big Niners fan. Don't know if no, you're not into hockey, huh? You're not into hockey, not yet.
Big Sharks fan, baby.
Big Sharks fan. Okay, there you go. So he'll be our replacement for the week. But today we're talking our four main sports. We got the NFL news, NBA news, MLB, because the MLB season started. We'll talk a little bit about that, and I'll end us off in Formula One. But to start us off, in the NFL, I've talked about this before plenty of times. We talked about the Raiders trade with the Ravens that got rescinded with Maxx Crosby. More articles coming out every day. Trey Hendrickson, he was expecting to become teammates with Maxx Crosby in Baltimore, right? We talked, Maxx Crosby thought he was going to be a Raven. Obviously, stuff went on behind the scenes with Trey Hendrickson, and Trey Hendrickson ultimately signed with Baltimore after the trade got rescinded. So what could have been a lethal duo in Trey Hendrickson and Maxx Crosby is a thing we will never see because the Ravens were so shady about the trade and ended up just going with Hendrickson instead of Crosby. And so it's interesting because those are two elite edge rushers that could have been on the same team, and Baltimore opted to say, hey, we'll keep our draft picks and we'll take one of the two.
Yeah, shady is a little hard word because I feel like, if you feel a guy's not ready or something else is gonna happen, and you really don't want to take a risk on 2 first-round picks. If I was a GM for the Ravens, I definitely would have taken the risk and still gave up the 2 first-round picks. He's only 28. He's at his highest ceiling. He's in his prime. Hendrickson, he's a great replacement. I don't think he's going to replace Crosby because this Crosby just, man, he's probably, I'm not a Raiders fan, but I mean, he's probably the best DN in the league. Sometimes I even have him higher than Myles Garrett, and a lot of people can judge me for that. That's fine. But you know what? I really like Crosby, and I was hearing rumors about the Niners trying to trade for Crosby's, and I would definitely give up 3 first-round picks for Crosby for the Niners. We don't draft good in the first round anyways. So, that's just how I feel. But you know what? Like I said, if I was the Ravens GM, I would have made that trade.
Yeah, no, like you said, Crosby, some people say he's the best DN. And when it comes to saying best DN, it's not just the sacks. It's not just the pass. It's also the run game, too, because Crosby is so good at that. He'll stop the run. Teams don't run his way just because they know he'll get a TFL. I mean, he's just been so amazing. Myles Garrett, obviously, we know Myles Garrett, Defensive Player of the Year. Maxx Crosby hasn't had that yet, but he's up there. And from the Ravens standpoint, they, like you said, they should have. I think, honestly, if you had a chance to pair 2 edge rushers, I know it would cost you a lot of money, but I bet you Lamar probably would have found a way to restructure his contract to make the money happen. But that's the side of the Ravens. Instead of trying to get both, they only took one and kept the draft pick. But for the Raiders, head coach Kubiak, he was happy. He said, getting Maxx Crosby back feels like picking up another free agent, and that's what it felt like after seeing all their signings when free agency started. They got the 2 linebackers, they got they traded for the corner, they got the edge rusher that was supposed to quote unquote, kind of replace the production of Maxx Crosby. You get all these guys, and then boom, Maxx Crosby's back on your team. So it was a huge, I don't know if I would say win for the Raiders, but I think it is. Obviously, yeah, you would have liked the 2 first-round picks, right? Build on the future. You already have a young core, but you have the first overall pick, which was most likely would be Fernando Mendoza. He's already learned the playbook. But you get your all-pro player. You get Maxx Crosby, the guy who, as we've said this in previous episodes, that when you think of the Raiders, you think right now of Maxx Crosby because that's how big he is, that's how good he is. He's like the one guy that when people think of the Raiders, that he's the guy, and now he's back with the team, like nothing's happened. He's here to stay, and things are looking good for Vegas.
Yeah, it really is. And, like you said, the 2 first-round picks would be great for the Raiders because they're rebuilding, but you're not going to find a Maxx Crosby in those 2 picks. Just in my opinion, I don't feel that. That's why I feel like, that those 2 first-round picks for the Ravens, they should have just done it. Why they didn't do it? Like you said, their doctors didn't like it. GM didn't like it. So, they saw something that we obviously didn't see, which is understandable and respectable. But like we just said, he's a great run stopper. Like you just said, no one runs against him. I mean, the guy plays every down. The guy plays every down, every play. You see him out there all the time against the quarterback. Even when they run the ball, he's right there in the quarterback's face. So, like you said, it was just like you said, it was a free agent move, kind of like, we lost him, but then we got him back. So it really worked out perfect for the Raiders. They signed a center, I believe.
Yeah.
I think they're should pick up a receiver. Maybe they'll draft a receiver. There's some other receivers out there. I don't know who's left really, but they could use another receiver. They have a great, solid tight end, probably the second best, maybe third best tight end in the league. So they're right there. And like you said, they're gonna have Mendoza. So should they start him? Well, that's something to be seen soon. But I mean, I think they should. But I've heard rumors that hey, why not trade for Mac Jones?
That's perfect that you bring that up because that was one of the things we're talking about is Klint Kubiak. He brought up multiple scenarios. He's like, normally you don't really want to start a rookie quarterback, right? For a multitude of reasons, right? He's still young. He's got to learn the playbook. He's got to learn the offensive system. He's got to learn the cadence. He's not going to be clapping his hands to hike the ball. He's got to learn just what the calls are. He's got to learn to read the defenses. Obviously, stuff Mendoza knows how to do, but at the next level. You obviously don't want him getting beat up, but the Raiders they built a better O-line. However, though, he did say there's instances where you don't have the veteran quarterback to go in there and play him. And you might have to play him day one. So there really isn't no correct answer to this question on will Mendoza start day one because it's a 50-50 at the moment. They have Aiden O'Connell, right? He's been in the league. He's been a starter. Not the greatest, but he's got the experience. He could start a few games if they want him to. There's guys like Kirk Cousins out in free agency that he's been linked to the Raiders, but nothing's been talked about since. It was like a one day rumor, and now it's been gone. So there's a real possibility Fernando Mendoza starts day one for the Raiders, which I think they should, right? I mean, Tennessee did it with Cam Ward last year, and I thought he played pretty well for a really bad team. And so I think for the Raiders, I mean, yeah, veteran would be nice, but you kind of made all these free agency moves. You got Maxx Crosby back. You're kind of almost not in a win now situation, but your window of winning is kind of opening this year. And so I think you got to try to use it as best as you can. And I think starting Mendoza day one, I still think, the possibility of trading for a veteran quarterback is still on the table. Don't know if it'll be Mac Jones. But I do think Mendoza should be the day one starter. You got to get him as much experience as possible.
Yeah, I agree with that one. I definitely agree. If you can't, Kirk Cousins would be a perfect, I think, because, you play him just for 1 year. Sign him a 1 year, $8 million. Get Kirk Cousins in there, let him ride the bench just for one season, and then boom, he's there and he's got, if you're getting blown out with Kirk Cousins, you can always put him in. It's not like you can't put him in. It's just that, I just don't like starting a quarterback like that, especially with the talent he has. He's a great person. I mean, he's gonna be the future of the Raiders. So at least just give him a 1 year where just let him ride the bench, let him learn Kirk Cousins. He can be right behind Kirk Cousins, learn a lot from Kirk Cousins. How to be a throw because he's already a runner, so that's great for him already. But if he needs to throw and be more accurate, maybe he can learn from Kirk Cousins. But if he doesn't start, if you guys don't sign him, then I guess O'Connell's gonna start. But if you're gonna have O'Connell, might as well just have Mendoza start, in my opinion. So that's just how I feel.
And Kirk, he's worked with Klint Kubiak before, so he kind of knows the system. Like I said, he'd be a great mentor. But it's strange because it's not like an Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love situation, right? Rodgers was MVP when they drafted Love. Love sat 3 years behind him, and now look at Love. He's a phenomenal quarterback. Kirk Cousins is not the guy he was, right? He's old. He's a vet. He's gotten his money. But like you said, he's not signed. So it's like right now it's just O'Connell plus quote unquote Mendoza for the Raiders, and so yeah, it's a real possibility, high chance that Mendoza's day one starter. But moving to the NFC West, we're talking about the Niners. Two things. GM John Lynch, he's hopeful George Kittle can return week 1 from the Achilles injury, which is, good news, right? You want your starting tight end back. Do I think that's possible? I've seen it before. I've seen, was it Cam Akers return? He tore his Achilles in August and he returned. ended the season for the playoff run when they won the Super Bowl. So yes, it's possible. I don't know the significance of his tear. I don't know if honestly that's even a term. I don't know if there's like a how bad of a tear it was. It did happen, in the playoffs, so it is late in the season. But I mean, yeah, he's hopeful that he returns. But the second thing is, they had scientists look at the electrical substation, and they said that there's no cause for concern on the injuries, and so that's I don't know if that's a big relief for Niner fans or if that's just more of they're a really unlucky team with all the injuries that they dealt with.
Yeah, see, I looked it up a little bit, and supposedly, the scientist says that it was, it's made available for that. The scientist, he's been 45 years, but he won't be named. So, which was kind of interesting. Like, why can't we just name the scientist that looked at your field? It's not a secret, obviously. So I don't understand why they didn't. But they said it's all good, everything's good. That it's just like a normal gym, and like they said, I was reading. I have some notes here that they they did spend $9 million to improve the rehab and the recovery facility, and it's mainly like for the pools and underwater treadmills. So I mean, we'll see how everything works out. They didn't do anything to the training staff, so they said everything's good there. My only issue is I don't understand how we can't just name a scientist. Like, what was the issue? Well, why couldn't he be named? I mean, if he's done 45 years of work, well, what's the issue of just naming him? Like, I don't understand. Like that's the only thing that bothered me. So I'm like, why can't we just name the guy? It was just interesting to me. But
Yeah.
well, it is what it is. They didn't name him, so we'll see what happens. Like you said, just the injuries just piled up since 2020. The Niners have injuries that's just every year.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Why not get some validation from the scientists who, looked at the substation? But if it's true that it doesn't, affect them, then it crosses out one thing. Now, could it be really bad luck? Yes, it just can. Injuries are part of the game. But it also could be other aspects of it. How hard are they going at practice? How hard does Kyle Shanahan have them working at practice? That could be a factor. How long they're practicing. I know it's a physical sport. Like I said, injuries just happen, and 49ers just might be, a team that just unfortunately gets hit by them. They have to deal with them every year. Obviously you don't wish injury on anyone, but they've just been a team that constantly not the same guys, but they've had a lot of guys that they just go down. But it's an interesting topic to talk about the substitution because that's what everyone assumed it was. Now that it's kind of in the clear, it's going to be interesting how this next season goes. Maybe it's just a mental thing. Maybe these guys thinking, oh, there's an electrical station, like their bodies feel weaker. I don't know, but that clears the air on the substation. So it's kind of funny to see that everyone was wrong about it.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, the players that I saw that are coming back is Bosa, Mikael Williams, torn their ACLs, and they said they should be ready by training camp. I did hear that Kittle might be back first game of the season. Like you said, it's kind of hard to say. Lynch is saying that he should be ready week one. It's like, ugh, he just tore it in January, so it's like,
Do you
are
really
you
want
going
to
to
push
push?
it?
Yeah, do you
Yeah,
really want to push it? You just signed Tonga. I think it's Tongus, I think.
yeah.
So, he played good as a receiver. Yeah, he's not the greatest blocking tight end, but, you got you got to work on your left tackle right now. So you
True.
haven't even signed him, so, you have great receivers already. So it's like, you just signed Mike Evans, Christian Kirk. So, I'm not worried about this substation thing. I mean, the only thing in my issue was, like I said, you didn't name a scientist. Whatever, it is what it is. With social media nowadays, like it's just like, why can't you just name them though? The social media is just gonna blow it up. Like, well, there was a scientist that looked up, but the Niners don't want to name who it was. It's like, well, why would you do that? It makes yourself look bad, in my opinion. But like you said, we had a lot in. Fred Warner should be back. So Trent Williams is a big issue right now. You need your left tackle. They lost their center, and I didn't like that they lost their center in Hennessy. He signed elsewhere. I'm not sure where he signed, but I liked him, and you just got to see what happens and build from there. And they signed another old lineman, recently, so we'll see what they do. And it's going to be a competitive NFC West. I mean, right now we're in third still, behind the Rams and the Seahawks. So obviously Super Bowl champs. So, just we'll see what happens. I know those receivers were a great addition, though. So that very, very, very helpful for Purdy.
Yeah, speaking of the NFC champs, both teams that are in the Super Bowl, they're going to be appearing on the Hard Knocks training camp. For those who watch Hard Knocks, I don't really watch it. I watched it back in 2019 when the Raiders were on it. That was probably like one of the best seasons just because they had, the Antonio Brown situation and that. But yeah, they'll be in for the training camp, but it's more about the Super Bowl champs, the Seahawks. Head coach Mike McDonald, he's not overly concerned about replacing Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker. And when you hear that, you think, wow, you're not worried about replacing the Super Bowl MVP? And it's kind of true because Walker, though he was great, he was phenomenal. Like I've talked about it plenty of times before. When he took over the load when Charbonnet went out with injury, he was phenomenal. He looked like a top five back in the league. Um, then again, it's the running back position. We've had all the controversy about the contracts, and to be quite frank, running backs they're replaceable. They're replaceable. There's a lot of them on the market. There's a lot of them in the draft, and so yeah, I don't want to lose the Super Bowl MVP. He did sign for 3 years, $45 million in Kansas City, which is great for Kenneth, right? He'll be the lead back. But for the Seahawks, I mean, they have Charbonnet. He'll be coming back from injury. Then they have they have the draft, and you told me that they signed some free agents, correct?
Well, they drafted George Holani, if I said that correctly, in 2024, and then they picked up Emmanuel Wilson from Green Bay. So I looked up his stats real quick, and he hasn't ran a lot, but for 2024 he had 103 carries for 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, and in 2025 he had 125 carries for 500 yards, 3 touchdowns. 11 receptions for 48 yards in 2024, and 15 receptions for 99 yards, no touchdowns. So I mean, he's not going to replace obviously Kenneth Walker. You know, letting Kenneth Walker go was probably a good move. I already saw him when we do fantasy, so I had him one year, his rookie year, second year, and he did phenomenal for me. So I knew he was going to be a great back, great talent. Luckily, they, like you said, they found Charbonnet because I don't think they let him walk if they don't have Charbonnet. Just my opinion. I think they signed him because he was a big part when Charbonnet went down. That they really won the Super Bowl mainly because of their defense. We have to give the defense a lot of credit. You know, the quarterback, obviously, he was able to not turn over the ball, get to, Smith and Jigba. So, he did great getting the ball. But Kenneth Walker was a very big part. He could catch the ball in the backfield, and he also ran very, very, very well in between those tackles. You got to give the guy credit. He got his contract in Kansas City, like you said, and now he's going to be with Mahomes, and we'll see what he does out there.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, he was great. He was great. So now, yeah, Seattle will probably do a running back by committee. They'll probably split, reps probably 2 to 3 ways. Just have a committee of guys just, getting the ball. They had a great offensive line. So, I think any average running back with a great offensive line could put up great numbers. So I can see why he's not overly concerned. But yeah, it's good news for Kenneth Walker. He got his payday, he got his Super Bowl MVP, he got his championship. But more about the Super Bowl. Las Vegas. It's coming back. The Super Bowl is coming back to Las Vegas. In 2029, Super Bowl 63 will be going to Las Vegas. Vegas just held the Super Bowl in 2023. Yeah, 2023. Right? 22. No, 22.
I'm not
Niners.
sure.
It's either 22 or 23. It was Niners, Chiefs. I remember that. It was a great game. Unfortunately, Niners did fall short.
Oh, yeah. That
But
was 2022.
it was a great game. Obviously, great venue, right? It's ranked one of the, I believe, if not first, I think it's the second highest ranked stadium. I believe it's behind SoFi, actually.
Yeah,
Even though
second.
I've been to SoFi. SoFi, it's cool, it's nice, it's big, but it's kind of bland because when I took the tour, you just see all the walls they're just blank, and that's because they got two teams playing there, so they can't have they can't have one team just up on the walls. But it's a cool stadium. But Vegas is it's nice. They got obviously the Strip, great place to. I think it's a great place to have the Super Bowl. But yeah, so Vegas will hold the Super Bowl in 2029. But the final thing we'll talk about in the NFL, it's going to be in Cleveland. QB competition. We obviously know Shadur Sanders, right? The rookie they drafted fell all the way down in the 5th round. They drafted Dylan Gabriel. They had Joe Flacco. Obviously it was a group of guys last year. Shadur did end off the season as the starter. But now you have Deshaun Watson coming back from injury. You have Dylan Gabriel who's trying to, get that starting spot back. And then you have Shedeur Sanders. So you have a three-way battle of QB competition in Cleveland. And, Deshaun Watson Houston was phenomenal. We saw him in the playoffs. He's got the experience. Obviously, had all the allegations and all the issues going on. Hasn't played, and it feels forever. And then you got the two young guys from Oregon and from Colorado who are trying to earn their starting spot in the league. And so it's going to be very interesting because obviously, on one hand, Watson, he's got, does he still have the talent? We don't know because we haven't seen it. But he's got the experience. And then you got these two young bucks that are still trying to find, like I said, find their way in the starting lineup. And it's going to be interesting to see, because Todd Monken said, he doesn't expect to divide the reps equally. So obviously someone's going to be favored. I talked about this last week with the Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy. Someone's going to be favored to win the job. And so whoever that is, it's their job to lose. And I think Shedeur, he should probably be the starter and have Deshaun back him up, depending on how Deshaun plays. Like I said, we haven't seen Deshaun Watson play. Like you said about Mendoza and having a vet, the vet could always sub out and you could put your young guy in. But it's a very interesting situation in Cleveland on who will be the starting quarterback.
I agree. Like you said, we haven't seen Deshaun Watson in, gosh, who knows how many years. So we don't even know if he's got it still. The NFL is a game where if you miss a year, it's a big deal. So missing 2 to 3 years, which I'm pretty sure that's what he missed with everything going on. I have a feeling they're going to start him. I mean, just because he was guaranteed all this money, and I'm sure they restructured the contract, I believe, if I'm correct. I believe they did. But even if they didn't, they paid him all this money already. Might as well start him now. Like you said, you have two other solid young bucks coming in, and Sanders and Gabriel, and I like both of them. I think I'm more favored into Gabriel. He was actually picked ahead of Sanders, if I remember correctly. So, I do like him. But we'll see what happens. I'm not sure. The Cleveland Browns, they're the Cleveland Browns, so it's kind of hard to say what they're going to do.
Yeah.
They're very difficult because they're in a division with the Ravens and the Steelers, and and they have their Ohio battle with Cincinnati, so it's always hard for them. Those 6 games are always tough for them. So the right quarterback needs to play, and I don't know how their offensive line is right now. So, it's kind of hard to say. Do you want to start that, Shedeur or Gabriel? Maybe let Watson take some hits and see what happens, and if he does good, then that's great. Finally, you get the quarterback that you signed for 200 and I think 40-some million. Yeah. So, and it was all guaranteed. So it's like, wow, but, he could be rusty, I mean, like you said, or I said, 1 to 2 years, it could affect you in the NFL. So it could be Sanders, it could be Gabriel, and maybe they'll back up each other. Maybe Watson might be the third. We don't know. I mean, it's anyone's ball game out there in Cleveland right now, and it's just you think Sanders, I think Gabriel. So it's just pretty much it's a matter of opinion, personally. But if you don't want them to take hits, throw in Watson.
Yeah, we'll probably see all 3 of them play in preseason. So it's an interesting situation. I don't know exactly who I want to go with, but one last thing. NFL approves 1-year rule allowing replay center to correct mistakes by potential replacement refs. And so I think, honestly, it should have been a thing, right? It's like correct when you make the wrong call, it should, with the technology we have, there should really not be no wrong calls. I mean, obviously, yes, you want refs part of the game. You still want to keep the human aspect, but sometimes penalties cause teams losses, huge losses. I mean, geez. I mean, I can't even. I'm blanking right now. I'm trying to think of this past year, but there's just many situations where a late flag is thrown or a missed flag is thrown. A lot of face masks are missed, are not called. They're missed, and it causes a team a down, and that's 15 yards. And so I think that could be really beneficial for the teams, and it could be big. But moving on to the NBA, we got some little bit of news, and then we'll get into our standings update. Big news for the Warriors: the depleted, injured Golden State Warriors. We just talked about it last week. They lost Moses Moody. Well, they're gonna get someone back. Steph Curry. He's moved on to 5-on-5 scrimmages. He's aiming to return this Sunday against Houston. The Warriors, they're locked in the play-in. They're going to be they're probably going to be the 10th seed in the West. And so they're at the point where it's win or go home, right? Obviously, fans are, like I said last week, fans are divided. Do we want to lose and try to get a lottery pick? Sounds great, but I've said it before. Warriors haven't drafted that well in the first round as of recent. I think you look back in the past 5 years, Moses Moody was probably your best pick, and he was a 14th overall pick. And so it, but then again, you have if you get a healthy Steph Curry, I mean, he's an all-time great. I would take my chance with Steph Curry, um, in the playoffs, and so it's big news for the Warriors as Steph will be able to play with Kristaps. More news: Kristaps is looking. All signs are pointing to him resigning and Golden State, so that's good news for the Warriors as well. They could keep their big man, but yeah, big news for the Warriors as they get back Steph Curry.
Yeah, it's very big news, and I agree with you. I don't like these lottery picks. You don't even know where you're going to be. More than likely, the Warriors will be the 14th. So it's like, what? I mean, like you said, you hit on Moses Moody, but then he doesn't even play, and now he plays, and then boom, he gets hurt. So it's like, I would rather take my chances with Curry and, you know, the 8th seed and 9th seed and 7th seed. They don't want to hear that Steph Curry's coming back, because now they got to play in to possibly play him, and they don't want to play him just and then lose, and then now they're done. It's a one and done, 9 versus 10, and then seven versus 8 gets an extra game, the loser. But if Curry wins, because I'm sure they're gonna be the 10th seed, they beat the 9th seed, and the loser of the 7-8 seed, they don't want to see Curry. I mean, like you said, he's the best shooter to ever play the game. So I would rather take my chances with Curry. And right now, Porzingis, he looked good against the Nuggets. I just watched him the other night. He played great. He went against their center. I can't think of his name right now.
Jokic, yeah.
Yeah. So he played good against them. He hit his threes. He had buckets. He rebounded. He played defense. He looked great. So him re-signing would be just a great addition. That a center that the Warriors, honestly, since I've been a Warriors fan, never really had a center that can do what Porzingis can do. So I'm very looking forward to that with him and Steph next year.
Yeah, no, it would be huge if they could bring him back next year. Like you said, he spaces out the floor. He could shoot the three ball really well. I know his percentages this year haven't been great, but he could shoot the three ball. And a lot of the younger Warriors, they've been playing so great. Guy Santos, he's been playing phenomenal. Everyone likes to hit on Pajemski, but he's been playing great too. Obviously, he's not the best player in the world, but he's been playing good enough. Obviously, obviously they're not winning every game. It's hard, when you're missing an all-time great in Steph Curry, you're not going to win every game. But, their young guys are playing hard. They're playing hard. And Moses Moody, when he came back from his wrist injury, he was playing great. He had like 20-plus points against the Mavericks. And, yeah, his knee unfortunately blew out. But, yeah, the young guns are playing well for Golden State. And next year, you'll have Jimmy Butler return. And if you have Porzingis, you have Steph, Butler, and Porzingis. I mean, that's a deadly trio right there. And so it's going to be interesting to see if he does resign with the Warriors. But, yeah, it could be very, very very dangerous team for Golden State next year. But to move us into our NBA standings, in the East, the Pistons, we're getting down on the wire. We are 75 games in. There's not many games left. We're about to be in the play-in within the next 2 weeks. Pistons, they are up 4 games on the Celtics. Celtics are 50-25. Obviously, Jason Tatum, he's been on and off playing. They don't want to have him playing every game. They got to keep him healthy. Knicks are 48-27 to the 3rd seed. Cavs are right behind them at 47-28 in the 4th seed. Raptors are up on the Hawks, barely. 42-32. Hawks are the 6th seed at 43-33. And the play-in for the East, it's the 76ers at the 7th seed. Magic are the 8th seed. Heat are the 9th seed. And the Hornets are the 10th seed. That is solidified. That is the play-in and / playoff positions for the East. Really interesting in the East. Hawks, honestly have been under radar team. They're 43-33. Yeah, they traded for Jonathan Kuminga, but I've already seen Hawks fans not even wanting him no more. He's been playing really bad. But they're the 6th seed. They're out of the play-in, which is really surprising. As of right now, they would have to play the Knicks, and honestly, they could beat the Knicks because the Knicks are a team that I think should be better than their record is. I mean, they have all that star power, and feels like you just don't see enough wins in that win column.
Yeah, I agree. The Knicks, they're not playing good right now, but when playoffs come, it's it's a first to four wins,
Yeah.
so that's all that matters at that point. And yeah, the Hawks are playing great, and all, but I just don't see them beating the Knicks in a first round series. I see the Knicks winning in five. It should be pretty easy for them. If I'm, I think it's a 7 game series, the first round. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I see them winning in five. Boston and Detroit, man, they're playing great right now. So like you said, for the Knicks, they better bring their A game for the playoffs because, like you said, they have a lot of star power, and the Pistons don't have any star power, and they're just playing phenomenal right now. Man, they can play some defense, and you know what? Sometimes that's all it takes is some defense and rebounding, and then boom, you just get fast breaks, and now you're up by 10. Now you're up by 20, and it just the Knicks. I don't see them going anywhere this year, like you said, but I did see them being the Hawks. But I have a feeling it's going to be the Celtics and the Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, Pistons without Cade Cunningham. I thought Cunningham was playing at an MVP type level. He's out indefinitely with the collapse lung. We haven't got much more news on that, or not from what I've seen. But yeah, they're a gritty team. They play hard. They play tough. They play really good basketball. I mean, they've just been phenomenal this year, and I have them coming out from the East. And for the West, it's Thunders and Spurs. The Spurs are 2.5 games behind. Like I said, we're getting to the end of the season. They have a shot of getting the first seed. However, it's going to be tough. That Thunder team is really good. Don't know if Thunder will lose 3 more games and the Spurs can win 3 more games and stay above them. But hey, never say never. With Wembanyama, I would never say never. But in the third seed, almost a 10 game difference is the Lakers. They're 49-26. Nuggets are 48-28. They've gained a little bit of separation from the Timberwolves, who are 46-29. Rockets are the 6th seed at 45-29. However, they're only 3 games above the Suns, who are the 7th seed. So Rockets could potentially go into the play-in. However, it is very unlikely. But to round out the play-in, 8th seed is the Clippers, 9th seed is the Trailblazers, and the 10th seed is the Golden State Warriors. Like I said, the Warriors getting some what's the word? They're getting some help. Help's on the way for them. But yeah, the West to me this year, it's interesting, right? You have the Thunder, who obviously are the defending champs, but you have the Spurs, who have beaten the Thunder a lot this year. And then you got teams like the Lakers and Luka, who's been playing really well. You obviously have the multiple-time MVP in Jokic and the Nuggets. You got the young guy in Minnesota, and you got the Rockets team with KD. So there's like a lot of these teams in the West. They have star power. They have what feels like the team to win. It's just such a competitive conference. But to me, I think I'm gonna go with the Spurs, because I think, for me, my MVP this year is Victor Wembanyama. I don't know who yours is, but I think Victor, he's played great. He's got his team at the 2nd seed. I don't know when the last time they've been that. Probably 2017 was the last time they were the 2nd seed. So it's been some time, and he's been playing at an elite level, and no one can stop him.
Yeah, let's first I want to say, yeah, the West is stacked. The West is stacked. It seems like every year the West is always stacked. If the Rockets are that 6th seed, that 3 through 6, the 3 and 6 seed is the Lakers and Rockets. That's going to be a great series, and I think the Lakers are going to win that series. I could be wrong, but that's just going to be a great series. Did you say Minnesota was 5?
Yes, Minnesota is 5.
Yes, so Minnesota and Denver is going to be another great series of 4 and 5. The 1 and 2, the 7 and 8. If the Warriors were to win become the 8th seed or 7th seed, and they had Jimmy, they would definitely make a run at one of those teams. Maybe not beat them, but definitely go 7 games. They would have beat Minnesota last year if Jimmy didn't go down. That's just my opinion. But the West is just stacked. MVP, like you said, I'm leaning towards Wemby. I like Luka though. I think that the Lakers would not be where they're at right now without Luka. He this year he's lights out. He's been playing great. I mean, LeBron really hasn't been there, and personally, I think LeBron's done. Just I mean, he's 41, I believe. So I just think he's done. He's got he's still playing. He's just the body size that he has. He can still produce. Um, but I do like Wemby. I do like him for MVP. Right now, I'm not sure who I would vote for, but I don't know. Luka is just like I said. The Lakers would not be in the 3 seed without Luka. If they didn't have Luka, they would be up there in the 10th seed, right there with the Warriors, in my opinion. But Luka's just been playing lights out, so I would it would be hard for me. And to me personally, I could probably flip a coin for one of those guys, and I would be happy whatever the coin landed on for those two.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. A lot of people, Luca, he said himself, he could play better every year, and he still won't be in the MVP conversation. So, yeah, I think Luca, he's a dark horse pick, right? Yeah, every year he plays at an MVP type level. Obviously, he's gotten criticized a lot for his defense. I haven't seen that much this year. I'm not a Lakers fan, so I don't watch their games, but you usually would see it all over social media about people criticizing, how big he is and his size. But you haven't seen that this year. Everyone's been talking about how much slimmer he's gotten and how great he's been playing. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting when it comes to MVP. But I like that. You got Luca. I got Wembanyama. So two different guys. I like two new guys as well.
Yeah.
but that but that's to end us off in the NBA. In the MLB, not much news as of yet. Obviously, some injury news to some guys, but the big news that I've seen is Mariners' top prospect, Colt Emerson. He agrees to where to go.
95 million, I believe.
95. There you go. 95 million deal. For a player that hasn't even debuted. I mean, that is just crazy. Crazy. He hasn't debuted yet. He's just a prospect, and he's getting 95 million from the Mariners. I mean, to me, that's a huge gamble. I mean, hold on. Let me take that back. It's a huge gamble, but then again, there's no with like salary cap. So kind of, I mean, if you got the money, you could just spend it, right? But that's huge money for a guy that if it would have been different if he like say he debuted last year and he was showing great signs. Okay, yeah, you extend him. That's kind of like what the A's did with all their young stars so far.
Right.
But he hasn't even played a game in the major leagues, and he's gotten close to 100 million. I mean, that's just absurd.
Yeah, it's an 8-year deal that I read, and I'm just like, he hasn't swung a bat in the bigs. He's 20 years old, so that is if he can pan out what they're saying he's gonna be, it's worth it because then you got him for cheap for the
Yeah.
next 8 years, and then you're gonna have to obviously pay him, when he's 28. But I looked up his stats, from Class A to Triple A. He was batting 285 with 16 home runs and 78 RBIs. He was a 22nd pick in the 2023 draft. So, I mean, they say he has raw power. We'll see. That's still to be seen in the pros. Like you said, he hasn't played in the pros. So it's kind of hard to say if he'll even become something. But like you said, there's no salary cap. And I don't have a problem with it because he's the sixth. I have here the major ESPN has him as a number 6 prospect for 2026. So if he could become something, they're building something in Seattle. So, if he can become what they say he's gonna become, it's a great signing. Would I have signed him for that? No, I probably wouldn't have because like you said, he's 20, hasn't played one play in the big, so it's a lot of money for a kid that hasn't even played.
Yeah, no, see, like you said, Seattle does have something coming. They took what? They were in Game 7 with, if I'm not wrong, Game 7 with Toronto in the playoffs. So close to the World Series. Obviously Cal Raleigh was playing at an MVP type level last year. They have Julio Rodriguez. They just traded for Brendan Donovan this past offseason. And so yeah, they have Randy Rosarena. I mean, they have a great pitching staff, like phenomenal pitching staff. That's like not even like old. They're pretty like young in their careers. Obviously some of them are veterans, but yeah. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. The big money that they paid, and so same thing that the Brewers did. They signed one of their prospects to like a $50 million extension. But we won't talk about that crazy. But yeah, that was crazy news when I saw it today. I was like, wow, that's big money, big money.
Yeah, it was, and they added the new thing this year with the pitching where you can challenge it, the
Yes,
the
the
catcher
ABS.
or and it debuted this year, and I think that was great. Because like you said, like I don't want to go back to the NFL, but it could help the NFL as well, like you're saying on a call that possibly could make the deserving team deserves a win. So right now like the Yankees, I think they went 8 for 8 the other day for on they're on doing it, and I'm just like the coach was upset, but then he was happy because they got the challenges. The umpire got it wrong, but they had to challenge it. But at least they're able to challenge it, and I think that's great for the game. You only get, I believe, like 2 seconds to either challenge it or not
Yeah,
challenge. So I
right
think,
after right after the
yeah. So I
pitch.
think that's great. So you don't got time to think about it. It's either you think that was a strike or you don't think it was a strike. Same with the catcher. He has the option to call that as well, and I think that's great for the game. It did hurt the Giants this past weekend, but you know what? It's great for the game. I do love it. Like you said, we have all this technology. Why not use it? Just keep the umpires, keep the referees, and it works perfect still. You still have the human nature in it with a little bit of help of AI.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think the ABS has been great because they had guys don't really challenge it unless they're like for sure, right? They're not challenging every pitch, right? They
Right.
can't just be wasting their two challenges, so they're really strategic about when to use it and when they're right or wrong. And obviously, I think catchers they have the best ability of they should be the ones probably challenging stuff. When it comes to the pitcher and the catcher because they know the strike zone. Obviously, sometimes pitchers will challenge it. They sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong. But yeah, no, I think it's been very good to see. It's very very interesting to see how like correct or how wrong the umpires have been, or even the batters. I know Willie Adames last night he pitched. It was straight up. It was a straight up a strike. I mean, it was like 2 inches out, like almost dead center of the plate. He was wrong, but yeah, it's been very cool to see how players are using the ABS, and I think so far it's been great. But to move on to our standings, I know we're only not even like a week into the season, but in the American League, we had the Blue Jays and the Yankees. They were undefeated. There's no undefeated teams in baseball right now, so everyone's got a loss, which is honestly good to hear because we had a couple years ago where the Rays, where they were like 12-0 at one point, and they were like considered the best team, but nothing went for them that season. But yeah, we got the Blue Jays and the Yankees. They lead. Red Sox with all their new additions, they haven't been great. They're 1-3. Guardians lead the American League Central. Rangers they lead the American League West. They're 4-1. Astros are 3-2. Mariners are 3-2. Angels are 3-3, which they did this last year. Angels were competitive for like the first start of the year, and then become uncompetitive. And then the National League East, Marlins are 4-1. They lead that. Mets 3-2. Braves 3-2. Nationals 3-2. Phillies are 2-3. They've not been looking too great. In the Central, we got the Brewers who are 4-1. Reds are 3-2. Cardinals, Cubs, Pirates. Paul Skeens got blown up in his first start, and I know O'Neal Cruz was a big part of that. And then the NL West, really not looking good. Dodgers 3-1. Everyone else is 1-3 or 1-4. So that is our standings update. We'll continue talking about it more in the future when things get updated and more gets more games been played. But it's just great to see baseball back. Great to see. We had the World Baseball Classic, and now we have the season this year. So it's good to see baseball back. I've missed it. It's time to go to some games, try to get some crab sandwiches from the Giant Stadium. But yeah, it's good baseball is back. It's good. It's exciting times.
Yeah, it is. It's good. I'm happy. It's going to be a long season. Every year it is. The Giants opened up against the Yankees. Which was obviously they got swept. But the Giants did look decent. Pitch. The Yankees actually looked pretty good. Their pitchers looked great. And I watched all 3 games. Their pitchers looked great. Yankees did upgrade a lot. And what I'm getting at is because they play in I call it Little League World Series Stadium. So them going to San Francisco and pitching great and batting good, they scored runs. So that says a lot right there. In my opinion, the Yankees I think they're going to be a team to beat. Up in the AL East and in the American League. Obviously the Dodgers are the Dodgers. Me and my buddy were talking about them. And the one thing that we agree, and we're both diehard Giants fans, and we hate that the Dodgers are spending all this money. But we don't disagree with it because sometimes that's how you win, and there's no salary cap. So in my opinion, every team should be spending money to win, right now, the only problem right now that the Dodgers are winning, you're going to have to overpay for some players to get them away from them going to the LA Dodgers, so I think it's great. Personally, in my opinion, I hate the Dodgers, but you know what? To give credit when credit's due, spend the money. I have no problem with that. Giants own their stadium. They get 100% profit. Why haven't they been spending their money? And that's my opinion. And the thing is, everyone's like, oh, it's bad for business. It's bad for Major League. I personally don't think so. I think it's great. Spend your money. Hey, that's how you win. That's how you win. I have nothing against it because you know what? Since there's no salary cap for no teams, anyone can spend anything. If you want to be a cheap owner, I'm sorry to say that then you're not going to win right now in this day and age.
Yeah, no, it's just true, right? No salary cap. You don't really have to be smart with your spending. You can spend as much money as you want. But going back to the opening day, we had a weird opening day of Giants and Yankees. They started on a Wednesday, right? Netflix had their big old thing. They had this big old ceremony. It was streamed on Netflix, blah blah blah. And then they had a day off. They had a day off on Thursday. So it was a weird way to start the year. Obviously, like you said, Yankees did look good. I thought after the first game, Giants their pitching looked pretty great. I believe they lost 3-0 in the second game, and then lost 3-1 in the third and final game. Their bullpen, which honestly was a question mark coming into the year, I thought they pitched pretty well in those final two games of that series. But yeah, interesting way to start the year, and a lot of teams didn't even play on Sunday. Not even every team started on Thursday when the season started. I know the A's didn't start their series
Friday.
until Friday, so it was an interesting start, opening day. But nonetheless, it's great baseball's back, and yeah, like you said, owners got to spend. If they don't spend, it's unfortunate. But yeah, so I haven't been rumors or talked about any. I haven't seen anything as of recent of the lockout or of the salary cap. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I totally agree. Wow, you can't punish teams for spending money if they're trying to win. But to end this off, we're gonna end off in Formula One. This past weekend we had the Japanese Grand Prix, and it was a good one. It was a good one. Oscar Piastri was leading this race, and an unfortunate safety car. Ollie Behrman, he had a crash, and it caused a safety car. And Kimi Antonelli benefited immensely from this. He started on pole, but then he dropped all the way down to P6, and it was there for quite a while. And then the safety car saved him. George Russell, Oscar Piastri, and Charles Leclerc, they all pitted before the safety car. Lewis Hamilton, Kimi Antonelli, they all benefited. However, Kimi Antonelli, he ended up on top, and he's the youngest ever to lead the Drivers' Championship. He currently leads at 72 points. He is 9 points above his teammate George Russell, who was furious about how that safety car went. George Russell, he finished P4. Piastri, he ended up finishing P2, and Leclerc got the podium after defending George Russell the whole race, and then overtaking him in the second final lap and ending up in third. And now we don't have a race for the next 5 weeks. With the next couple canceled, it's unfortunate, but teams have the chance to upgrade their cars, try to get on par with Mercedes, and the Miami Grand Prix in a little over a month should be very interesting. But that is all for today. Thank you all for tuning in. I'd like to thank my other uncle, my Uncle Joe, for joining me today. Like I said, kind of on short notice, but I got him on here. Thank you all. Like I said, thank you all for tuning in. We get our episodes out every Wednesday on Spotify and YouTube, and then I get posts out on TikTok and Instagram, so don't forget to keep an eye out for those. But one final time, thank you. I'd like to thank my co-host, and thank you all for tuning in, and until next time, stay ready.